It's like I seem to be safer in my life when I'm working, and it just makes everything better. You know what I mean?
Ladies and gentlemen, here's Shia LaBeouf, everybody.
Welcome, Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf, yes?
The story of Shia LaBeouf is nothing short of upsetting and disappointing. He was an actor that had the world on his fingertips, and with a series of events, his world turned upside down and went from being praised by the most respected people in his industry
I think he's the best actor I've ever worked with.
to being deemed unpredictable, dangerous, and crazy. Los Angeles, California, June 11th, 1986, Shia LaBeouf was born into the world by parents Shania Side and Jeffrey LaBeouf. And as Shia would describe, my mom and dad were both artists who never found an audience for their artwork, and that unfortunately led to the family living in poverty. To the point there was conversations of Shia's uncle potentially adopting him because the parents didn't have the money to keep supporting him. Along with the financial struggles of the parents, Shia also claimed that his dad was abusive towards him in his early years of his life. One incident that happened was that Shia got a gun held to his head by his dad, which gave him PTSD for the rest of his life. But the reason was because Jeffrey was a previous servant in the Vietnam War. So at that moment he claimed that he had a flashback from the war, and unfortunately Shia was there to witness it. And to mount on his struggles, his dad was also a drug addict, with him being addicted to heroin, and was also an alcoholic. And later on his dad would be found ending up at rehab, and would also find out that his dad is also a sex offender. On the other hand, his mother was just a hard-working lady, trying to keep the family together. But regardless of how nice and caring she was, unfortunately she one day was sexually assaulted, to which Shia also witnessed, and he claimed that he was traumatized, but that's probably surface level emotions. And then also at the age of 3, Shia's parents would divorce, to which he decided to go and stay with his mother. So straight away, Shia's upbringing was no easy ride. He experienced a lot of trouble and stress, which gave him a life he didn't want, and as a result of that, he got up to some antics maybe he shouldn't have. At the age of 9, he was involved with the police because he stole on multiple occasions, which would include a Game Boy on one occasion and a pair of Nike trainers on the other occasion. And maybe he had the vision that his life was never going to be this magnificent and rich life we all want to chase and live for ourselves. But there's always a little bit of hope in this little boy's mind that he can turn around. It was early as the age of 10 that he found himself in the show business, with him finding a way to start up stand-up comedy. His career of stand-up comedy started in Los Angeles comedy clubs like the HBO Theatre, the Ice House, and the Baked Potato. To which he said himself, "I get out there and go, hey motherfucker, it's time for some jokes." And all the drunks would be like, "Hey, wait a minute, this is weird as hell. What's this 10-year-old talking about?" Plus, at the Ice House, where they would normally serve drinks during the show, they had to hold the drinks whilst I was performing, which they didn't like. So you're already starting off on a bad foot. So just to attack them, I would come at guys like, "Hey, what's going on with your life, man?" I would just break a whole guy's life down. He's a 50-year-old man at a comedy club by himself. There are so many jokes there. Sad, weird, and twisted stuff. And everybody would laugh at it, and that guy would hate it. I was like an insult comic. A couple years later, when he was 12 years old, he would find himself with an agent to represent him, but it happened in a very bizarre way. He went through Yellow Pages to find a potential candidate that can represent him, and he did. He stumbled across a lady, to which he would take the chance to ring her. He represented himself as a 50-year-old British manager, and would completely sell himself. Not knowing what she was getting into, she decided to take him under her wing. Bearing in mind, all that Shia had behind him was stage confidence and improvisation from stand-up comedy. He had zero experience in actually acting, but he wanted it more than anything. Within weeks, his agent worked a magic, and he was involved in various small gigs, such as ER, The X-Files, and Suddenly Susan. Shia didn't want stardom though. He just wanted to keep earning money and bringing something in for his family. But little did he know, acting was going to pay him very, very well in the future. Then a company called Disney had a show called Even Stevens, to which Shia would be a part of. And this was a moment he was maybe waiting for. A moment to get on regular TV. He would play the role Louis Stevens and perform the role so well he would win an Emmy Award in 2003.
And the Emmy goes to...
Gotta love the Disney Channel, Shia LaBeouf.
The show would have aired longer than what it ran for, but it ended because of a rule that Disney have, which is the 65 rule. And this is, no matter how successful a show's doing, on the 65th episode it would end no matter what. Although there was plenty of upside to this new stage in Shia's life, there was also a negative, and that was he had to relocate closer to set. And that would mean he ended up living with his dad, and leaving the mother he loved very dearly. And this was when the abuse started towards Shia, with his dad being mentally and physically abusive. Then after chipping away at Even Stevens, he would get noticed for his performances on the show, and he was then picked up to perform in his first major role in a film called Holes in 2003, and he played the role Stanley Nelyats. The The film would be a box office hit, with the film grossing $71 million worldwide. He would continue to get roles in films such as Dumb and Dumber, Charlie's Angels, iRobot, Constantine, and finally Bobby. And then the performances from these films would start to earn him more lead roles in films like The Greatest Game Ever Played, which earned $15.4 million at box office, and Disturbia, which made $118 million at box office. Enter Steven Spielberg. This guy was a very respected name within the industry, and he saw the talent in Shia, and it would be only himself that would be the reason for anything to go wrong. He went as far to say that Shia will be the next Tom Hanks. Spielberg got Shia to be involved in Transformers, the film that ultimately changed Shia's life. The film was an instant hit and was a global success, with it earning $709 million worldwide. And for Shia's contribution in the film, he was paid $750,000. Shia's next role would be in yet another Spielberg film, Indiana Jones, to which again was a global hit, earning $790 million worldwide. But this would be the first time that Shia would receive some negative reviews over his acting in a film, and this would cause internal issues, and admitted later on that he regretted acting in the film. But at this point in his life, the negative comments might have been affecting Shia in a way people may have not realised, and this was because he was starting to get in trouble with the law. On different occasions, he was arrested for attempting to stab his neighbour, trespassing, and bar brawl fights. And he admitted he was back on the alcohol again. Never mind what he was getting up to with the law, he would return back in his main role for the second and third Transformers, to which he got paid $5 million for the second one and $15 million for the third. But he wouldn't act in the fourth, as he felt his character's story came to an end and didn't see a place for him to be in the film.
But I don't have anything new to contribute, and I don't think there's anywhere to take Sam, really.
His next movie after that would be in 2013, to which it would be called Nymphomaniac. And after this, he decided to step away from blockbusters, and he would say that there is no room for artists in the studio system. And during this time, this is when he found his first love, Mia Goth. And at the same time, he was set to make his Broadway debut, but would soon break away from it due to creative differences. Alec Baldwin came out to express the hardship behind trying to get on the same page as Shia. And the reason behind this was because the two were working on set together, and Alec would claim that Shia one day attacked me in front of everyone. And Shia would hit back and say, "You're slowing me down, you don't know your lines, and if you don't say your lines, I'm just going to keep saying my lines." And as a result, Shia would leave. This is where patterns were occurring within Shia's life, with him getting involved in controversy again and again. And it would start at the Nymphomaniac premiere in Berlin. He would turn up to the red carpet with a suit, but over the top of his head, he wore a brown paper bag that would say, "I'm not famous anymore." And not long after this premiere, Nymphomaniac held a press conference to which, after 10 minutes, Shia would storm out for no reason, which left his colleagues confused but not surprised, as they knew the type of antics he got up to from working with him on set. But a month earlier, he came out to media saying he's retiring from all public life, which, needless to say, to this day has been a very contradictory claim. Soon after these events occurred, he would meet two people in his life, called Luke Turner, who was a British artist, and someone called Ronco, who was a Finnish artist. And the trio would form a group called the Performance Art Trio. And the first campaign together was held 2 days after the premiere was held, which was called #IamSorry. And he would sit inside of an art gallery with a bag over his head, crying silently, and it would last for 6 days. And the apology was for plagiarizing artist Daniel Close, and would say, "I'm embarrassed he didn't give Daniel the credit for his new short film." But later on, Shia also claimed that during the time that he was doing this performance, he was sexually assaulted. The year of 2014 was certainly a year for Shia to forget. His anger started to get way more apparent outside of acting. In January of that year, he would be involved in a public altercation, with him headbutting someone in London. And then only a month later would be involved in another incident in a restaurant inside of Los Angeles, where he would find himself urinating up a wall. After this, there would be a video of him trying to spark a fire outside of a strip club in New York. Then he would be arrested in New York after being thrown out of Studio 54.
Shia LaBeouf in court this morning after spending the night behind bars.
He was hauled off in handcuffs last night, accused of acting up during a Broadway performance.
But there could have been a plausible explanation for all these weird and unexpected outbursts that Shia was getting involved with. It may have also been the fact that during this time he was a part of an ongoing project for the film called Fury. And it was known by this point that Shia takes a very systematic approach when getting into character, to which he really wants to live the life of his character he's acting to ensure maximum performances.
You know, he was this guy who came in, he like pulled his tooth out because he thought his character shouldn't have a tooth. You know, he like cut his face, you know, he didn't shower for 8 months. And at first when I met him, I was like, wow, this guy's just fucking, he's just loud, you know. He's wearing his process on his sleeve, showing everybody how hard he's working. But what I found, you know, after the 8 months of working with him, was somebody who, and I you know, and this is, it's just my own, he is every bit, this thing is every bit as vital to him as it was with me. I found a real partner. I found a real kindred spirit. I found that he was so fucking, he was willing to risk it all for the work. And I walked away with like an enormous amount of respect for him and love for him.
During promotion for the film, Shia would say that he wanted to find a new interest in Christianity during filming, after being raised Jewish by his mother and Christian by his father. But then some positive news came out about him receiving treatment for alcoholism. In late 2014, he would watch the music video of the song Shia LaBeouf live, which was written by Rob Cantor. In 2015, the performance art trio was back together again to bring their new message to the wider audience. One example was #FollowMyHeart, where the main actor's heartbeat, which was streamed for 6 days in a symbolic joining of humanity. Another crazy performance was called #AllMyMovies in November, which was Shia watching all of his films back to back in a reverse chronological order. And then we get to the most memorable performance, which was Ponytail Shia, for half an hour in front of a green screen. And the most viral segment was where Shia would perform an aggressive motivational speech. The same year, he would perform in the music video, which would be a viral hit, Elastic Heart by Sia, but drew a lot of negative attention as the girl he was doing the video with was 12 years old. 2016 was somewhat of a quiet year for him, as he was only featured in one film, which would be American Honey, but was in the media for other reasons like his romantic life, with paparazzi noticing that Maya had been walking around with an engagement ring, but then was hospitalized for a stunt that had gone wrong and it involved a head injury. It wasn't long before the actor would get into public altercations again, with him getting detained for public intoxication in Texas. The reason would be because he jaywalked in front of a group of police officers. A day later, it got reported that him and Mia got married and opted to get a rather untraditional marriage, and would opt their way of marriage by getting hitched at Viva Las Vegas. His next venture would be a surprise to everyone, as he would decide to try his luck in the rap game. He surprised everyone with his skills, as everyone would expect amateurish mistakes. The performance trio would get together again and make a further 2 projects, one of which would be at the Sydney Opera House, where people got invited into the building to express their freedom of speech, as long as they started it with, "and in the end." The next year, Shia's headlines would mainly come from political actions, with it starting with Shia not being impressed by the election of Donald Trump, and the trio with all the same beliefs would launch their next campaign, which would be "He Will Not Divide Us." And he would end up getting arrested at his own protest outside the museum for attacking someone, and the new location was New Mexico, and was soon shut down as there was gunshots reported in the area. They would make alterations to their campaign and would relaunch the stream, with the change that was so obvious to the public eye, with a very clear message, which was held high on a white flag, which said the same message as before: "He will not divide us." But this time it was in an unknown location, and this was meant to be a new permanent broadcast. But after 38 hours, the location was found thanks to 4chan users.
4chan guys did was fucking amazing. This is what they did. He was doing some weird art piece where he like stood around with a bunch of other people and was like, "He will not divide us. He will not divide us." They would all say that. And then all these 4chan people found out about it, so they showed up and started yelling a bunch of fucking Trump shit. Shia LaBeouf put up a flag in the middle of nowhere that said "He will not divide us," and then had a live stream where you could go and look at the flag as it's waving in the breeze, right? They found the fucking flag. They found out where it was, and the way they found it was genius, and it's all detailed in this radio lab, because what these guys did was awesome. All right, first of all, it was brilliant. They found social media posts that showed that people had met Shia LaBeouf in some place. Is that how you say his fucking name? LaBeouf. They found out that they had met him in some weird place in Tennessee. So they triangulated where he would be, right? So then what they did was they went around. They had one of their members go around with a car and beep the horn so they could hear the horn on the camera. And once they heard the horn on camera, then they knew he was there, or then they knew the flag was there. So then they found out where it is by stars. They looked at the fucking stars and they figured out where the area is. because when it's nighttime, you can see the stars on the live feed, and they figured out what constellation it was. They went to the fucking flag, took it down, put a Make America Great Again hat on and a Pepe the Frog thing up there, and the guy walks up to the camera and goes, "Fuck Shia LaBeouf."
They would relocate to the roof of the Liverpool's Art Foundation. And after the relocation, the trio would come out to the public and say the reason it is no longer in America is for the reason America is simply not safe enough for this artwork to exist. But then when this finished, his public outbursts were still very apparent, with him appearing in a video drunkenly shouting in a bartender's face at a bowling alley. And after his actions, they would cost him a hefty $5 million. In June, another damaging event happened, to which he would be arrested for disorderly conduct and public drunkenness. 2018, he would manage to stay out of trouble, but he would have his own personal problems, to which he would find difficult. His wife Mia Goth would file for a divorce, and would begin a new relationship with British artist FKA Twigs. This would last for about a year, and this would come back to really haunt him. Then going back into acting in 2020, he would be a part of a film called The Tax Collector, and going back to how he approaches his acting roles, he would get a full chest tattoo, to which, when this met the social media world, he got trolled hard, and as a response to this, he would get in more trouble with the law, to which he was charged with misdemeanor, battery, and petty theft. Never mind what he was getting up to outside of acting, his next role would be in the film Don't Worry Darling, to which he was the lead cast for it, until he was no longer part of the film, as it was reported that he was dropped and replaced by Harry Styles. Olivia Wilde would come out and explain the decision by saying Shia was combative, and she would say that she wanted to make a safe, trusted environment. But Shia would come out to his defense and say that he left the show due to people not having enough time to rehearse. The biggest blow to his career would happen when FKA Twigs would sue Shia for being abusive towards her in their relationship.
Accuses LaBeouf of sexual battery, assault, and inflicting emotional distress. He denies all of the allegations.
And would also make a claim that Shia gave her an STI whilst him knowing. And after the relationship was finished, he was in another brief relationship with someone called Margaret. And at this point in Shia's life, he came out and said that he admitted that he was seriously considering suicide.
Now the gun is loaded. Like, I haven't left my sitting position, you know?
2021 would part away from his agency and would go to rehab, to which he really took the time to reflect. And it would be whilst he was in rehab, he wrote about his life and said as he got further with writing it, it kind of became a script and would soon become a movie, which later was called Honey Boy.
She took a gamble on me. You know, I was in rehab when we started having a conversation. I got arrested in Georgia for fighting with a cop, wound up in rehab, and didn't hear a damn thing about God, spirituality, personal growth, accountability. My whole, as soon as I got to rehab, was let me get back to this hustle. So I started writing a script in rehab. That's how fucking mad I was.
And this film was basically his version of an autobiography, with him playing out his life in movie format. And he played his dad and portrayed him to be an evil person. This film excelled beyond expectations of anyone and was nominated for an Oscar, but also when he was in rehab, he got in touch with Maya again, and they would iron out their differences and would make the choice to get back together and now are parents to their first child. Shia would be under the scenes up until 2022, and the film that he came back to was a film called Padre Boy. And also during this time would come out to say that his mother passed away, and the final moments with her made him understand religion in a new way. And recently was involved in a podcast with someone he knows well from the cast from Fury. He was called John Bernthal. The podcast has amassed a lot of views since its upload, and this was all about Shia coming out and addressing everything and owning up to his mistakes. And from this interview, he would say that he unfairly painted his dad in the film.
Now here's a man who I done vilified on a grand scale. I put all this shit in the street, you know? And used him, juiced my dad is like, this is the reason I'm fucking foul out here. You know, I'm come from this wayward upbringing, and, you know, my dad is the reason I'm such a fuck up. You know, he's a biker and a wild man and a criminal and a da-da-da and abusive and I wrote this narrative, which was just fucking nonsense. My dad was so loving to me my whole life. Fractured, sure. Crooked, sure. Like, wonky for sure. but never was not loving, never was not there. He was always there. He was always there. And I done a world press tour about how fucked he was as a man. Honey Boy is basically like a big woe is me story about how fucked my father is. And I wronged him.
He gained a lot of mixture reviews, with a lot of people respecting how he's come out and admitted of a lot of wrong that he done. Even now, on videos similar topic, you get the people that will comment to say that they have the most respect for Shia and how he reacts towards his mistakes by admitting himself to rehab and genuinely trying to find help for himself. And especially now that he's a father, he will want to bring that father figure to his son for him to look up to.